Let's go. Can you hear me? Yeah. Can you hear me? Yeah. Hello everyone. Welcome back onto the YouTube chain. Welcome back onto the It is really Hello everyone. Nice to have you here. I have an echo. It is really Hello everyone. Nice to have you here. I have an echo. It is really Hello everyone. Nice I will try to solve that. I have an echo. It is really That should be fine. If everyone can hear me, let me know if it's not the case. Okay. Alright. We just need to go to the chat. Here we are. All good. So, yeah, welcome back. Sorry for this little interruption. Welcome back to the YouTube Suho chain. I will present for you today a subject that I have a big interest in, as I'm working for the Suho studio and we're designing a sustainable construction. Suho is a company that is on the market for more than 15 years with a lot of experience in certifying buildings and creating models to actually simulate energy consumption and all sorts of certification around sustainability. So this is a pleasure to speak today about the role of designer in the realm of sustainability. So I think it's really important to come back on this notion of what is a designer today, because our role is actually changing a lot with the way the construction is affected by this new subject that we bring onto efficiency, and especially here in Australia. So I will go back into the past that I believe is useful to consider when in any step of your work as a designer you want to make sure that you actually achieve sustainability in the construction. So there is a lot of aspects that are pretty new to Australia about sustainability, and the country kind of struggled to achieve the standards that are already in place in Europe due to the lack of regulation around it, and also and some the change of the industry is a pretty hard things to do. But the designer has a key role in this transition, and I think it's really important to understand that with the technology changing and the project becoming more specific with a lot more challenges involved, it is really important that the designer take all these aspects on board. So I will speak about integrative design, which is basically what I call integrative design is this design that is actually taking in consideration a lot of this specific knowledge coming from engineering and site experience and all these simulation that are also available nowadays to be able to actually see how a building should perform when it's built before you do it. So it's really important that in the past that the designer has, you actually consider all these aspects. So hello Phil and Vincent. So the second aspect that I want to actually speak about is about how, as a designer, you actually work on this integrative design by a really collaborative approach. And I think there is a gap already existing in between design and construction that is a whole reminiscence of the industrial society and the disappearance of guild, but by taking on board those sustainability aspects and those specificity and specialties in the work, this is also a way to actually bridge this gap, and I will speak about how we do that along the project, and then I will go to the technical and specific aspect of the project, and how, like in the reality, you can imply those elements. So this is about bespoke design. So design is the way architecture is set up, and the way we see design as a sustainable designer is answering a lot of questions. This is a design that is made for the client for sure, and to answer the targets. But it's also about answering a context, an environment, a weather, and a lot of other aspects that are contextual. So I will speak also about how you integrate this notion of sustainability as a strength in the project, and also how you answer nowadays a question about, for example, density by working on compact envelope and using solar passive design, by producing clean energy and smart envelopes. So this all things, this all aspect of the project that we integrate in sustainable design work together, and so it's not only about designing for the client, but it's also having like consideration beyond what you just can offer to the client. And one of the first steps that we take into integrative design is to actually take our responsibility as designer to define what sustainability means. So what does it mean for the client? So it's really important because we live in a realm where there is a lot of greenwashing. Let's be honest about it, and people are a bit uncertain about the way they consider sustainability, and there is one good reason for that. There is many aspects in sustainability. So when you've got a client coming in front of you, it's really important to actually define with them what your objective in the construction is around this subject of sustainability, whether it's energy efficiency, whether you want to reduce the carbon emission, and how you want to do that. Is it in the selection of the material, the aspect of short cycle production and consumption, if there is some health aspect about it, about the toxicity of the environment in the house, or the impact on the outside environment of the building. If you integrate the building, there is also in sustainability a lot of aspect that we sometimes forget about, the social aspect of it, like a long-term vision of the building will bring fit in a long-term vision of the city, for example, and a long-term vision for a family. So there is also this aspect of recycling, and so it's really important that you kind of set up a sort of chart of priority with the client, and also that you bring yourself some element about it. So it's clarifying the definition of sustainable building. Now, when it's about your job as a designer to actually also drive the clients through this process, it's really important to come with some reference on the impact of the decision that can be made in this aspect. So having numbers, telling them about the economy that you will do into having energy efficient building, for example, and then putting numbers and reference for the project and the decision is kind of a good thing. Now, we do that in general as a designer with the client. It's about setting a list of priority. So you've got an idea about where the budget is, because there is always a limited budget in a project, where the budget is going. And by setting up this really clearly on the paper with the client and having a clear idea about the target in terms of energy efficiency and so on, you actually guarantee or have more chance, at least, to achieve your targets at the end of the project, because there is always some time in the project where the client will be brought into some other interest, and it's important to remember them and to also keep track of what the sustainable targets are. So I come back quickly on an experience that we just finished this year, which is a 10-star house in Woodford in Adelaide. So this house is actually a pilot project, but it has been a really great experience to put a lot of thought into how we want to achieve sustainability in the build as designer. So we actually develop a new typology, so to offer the possibility for some people that are willing to live a different way. I mean by that the way they use the money, the way they build their house, their home, is sought to fit with a new generation that is actually interested to pay less for warming and cooling, and don't want to have to spend too much time cleaning and worry about things, and will put its energy on enjoying life and having a better relation with their outside environment and their social contacts. So this is about creating spaces that are quite compact by adding traditional spaces, functional spaces, integrated storage, and create a real relation in between outside and inside, so the outside become a prolongation of the house. So about integrative design, I wanted to go back on one aspect that I feel it's really important to mention, and we speak a lot about that to the client. It's like it's not because you are designing a sustainable house that you need to compromise on architecture or aesthetical quality in the design. There was this bad reputation of sustainable building that drove a lot of people out of the spec, and I think it's a pity because I do believe actually that is actually a rich source of inspiration, like sustainability, the way the new material we're using, the way we shape the house to be passive design is actually a quality that you can add, and I think there is a language in architecture for it. So just like maintaining this kind of idea that this constraint that you put on the project is actually bringing some quality and also some architectural quality in your project. So the way we do work with integrative design is to have a holistic approach. It's like being a doctor, a general doctor, and having to work with all sorts of specialists to actually bring your client in the best conditions. So I believe the architects or the designers has this mission to have this really overview of everything and understand that how things work together. So we work a lot with a schematic system, and the way we manage all aspects of sustainability are often connected to each other. So it's really important to have this global vision of it and to work with it. And there is some steps that are really important into the process. One is analysis, and so when you do contextual construction, you have to have a good idea about where you're working, what's around it, which kind of material are around you, so you can actually act on that. But you also need to have a good knowledge about the behavior of your client or your clients, so knowing what are their requirements, but also the way they live and the way they can use the building. Then you can really fit the solution to adapt with the client's need and to help them to improve the way they want to improve their way of life to be actually more energy efficient and more comfortable in their environment and feel that they're doing good. So you do the proposition and then you actually go to simulation, and that's an important point that we're working a lot on in SUO. About is like to actually use those software that are available. First, the NASA software, Accurate, the First Rate 5, the software that are simulating the building and give you an indication about the future household energy consumption, about cooling and heating the building. So we actually work directly at the beginning of the design process with the software, so we can have back and forth some information about what is really working in terms of energy efficiency in the design we put together. And that's one of the I feel really lucky to work in this company because we've got the possibility to have this all expertise from my colleagues that are OSD consultants and engineers and so we can actually speak about all those really technical aspects and all the elements that will actually come forward to achieve a really energy efficient building. So this simulation is a 10-star building. This is the one we finished in Woodford, and you can see that for a 10-star, the use of energy per year is 3 megajoule per square meters, which is really, really good. It's not far from being passive, and you can see the temperature, the number of hours where the temperature is in a good bracket of comfortable temperature, and it's really good. So this house will be monitored, and we will have the opportunity with this pilot project to actually have a critical consideration about what the software is bringing into the project and how that translates into construction. But there is like a whole webinar that can be around that, so I will go further. Just quickly about the software and the tools we've got to actually model and support the design. We actually have today some architectural software that are pretty good because they help you to simulate, for example, the shading and the light, the natural light in the building all the year long. So you can actually, when you design, constantly quickly simulate the behaving of the light into the natural light into the building to give you an idea. For example, if you want to have a maximum of light in winter, which is probably a good thing to warm up the building and act on the mass inside, and if you want to protect with eaves and other shadings the building from the summer light, then you can do that in the process of design. But we have also some other support in the design brought into with the simulation, for example, of design builder that give us the possibility to work and simulate cross ventilation in the building, or to have daylight analysis where you can have the impact on of the natural light on the glazing and the comfort inside. So you can see the simulation on the right side. We also can simulate the position, for example, of the solar panel that give us an idea about what is the best setting for the solar panel to be the more efficient. So there is a lot of tools that are available and that SO is actually working with to be able to integrate directly in the design those aspects, so you can progress with the design, having a good understanding of those elements for your building. And then again, coming back into the consumption, this is really important to have like this same schematic representation of the project that gives you an idea about where you go with your solution, your technical solution. Now, when it's about working with this element, and I think this is something that we experience inside of our own business, but also outside, it is really important to actually make sure that you have opportunity to speak with the people and to speak the same language. By that, I just want to come back on the fact that I spoke about a bridge before in between design and construction, and bridges, there is a lot of bridges to actually make in between design, construction, but also with the engineers and the trade on site. And so it's really good to acknowledge that you actually speak originally a really different language. Like I mean by that a designer is describing and illustrating projects, so he can communicate them to the client and to the site. So everything is happening into the representation and a little bit about speaking about it. When it's about the engineering, designing is a lot more about calculation and validation of capacity. So there is a different approach of the information. And when you specify something, this is a lot in the writing description, and there is a lot more conventional language about it. And when you arrive on site, and this is a lot about verbal communication and how to make things. So this is really important to make sure that translating from drawings or calculation or specification to verbal communication, everyone is actually understanding each other's. And for that, you need meetings, you need to be open-minded, you need to have respect in between each other's, and always check that everything is translated in every different languages. So we need a collaborative approach for those kind of complex project to be set up, and I think it's really important again to come back on the fact that we need to work with specialists early in the project and together. So you need to be able to make active choice early on in the project, not to deal with the consequence of every expertise brought into the project. And this is really important that you have this meeting early in the project so you actually can make everyone responsible for its own work, but also aware of what other specialists and experts are tied with, so they can actually think together about it and come back into their specialty and expertise with a good knowledge about what is required for the others. So this is about setting like strategic meeting from the beginning, having a good knowledge about the project you work with, and having a really good exchange permanently with suppliers, but also specialists, engineers, and so on, because you build up this knowledge from one project to the other by having a good communication, and then you bring it back into the project, back starting to work together early. So sustainability is right in the middle of that. This is really important. You actually look at the connection in between things. Like if you consider a strategy about ventilation, how does that act on the envelope of your building? It will actually be really important to have a look at how much airtight you want the building to be, for example, for your ventilation to perform in a good way, and what does that mean in terms of vapor control into the building and into the walls, for example, and the roof and the envelope. Same thing when you decide to put a certain level of insulation, you have to consider thermal bridging, so the choice of the material, the conductivity is really important, the way for example, the structure is actually having a hierarchy with the material of insulation will actually create or not some thermal bridging. So you will have to, for example, have a consideration before you have the engineer doing the structure about which material you will use, where you want to set up the structure into the wall, compared to the insulation and so on. And so those elements interact a lot in the project, and especially about thermal bridging and airtightness that are some really important aspect of energy efficiency in buildings. So you've got this, like for example, architectural design and structure. If they develop a good relation, originally you already have a sort of sense of aesthetical and a solution and the beauty. Like if you look at some Calatrava structure, there is a real thought about structure and architecture in the same time, and material when it's really important. But this sustainability aspect is bringing some more complexity and more technical aspect into the flowers. So this is important to look really from the beginning about energy production, energy consumption, durability of materials, which kind of ventilation you want to use, and what does that imply into the envelope, and how you interact with the structure. And so at the end, what I find out is that I always go back to the detail. And studying in Switzerland, one of my teachers told me one day that the detail is actually the heart of the project, and that you could actually make a whole project around one detail. And I find this approach really interesting because the detail is the key around is the key place around where you can speak about construction, and all these flowers that you can see, like all these elements interacting, are coming back to the detail, can be explained by the detail and can be developed around the detail. So we're working a lot about that in SUO, and involve a lot of thought about how we can detail and create a library of it for sustainability. So still about collaborative approach, this is really important, and I believe there is not enough of that designers have more experience on site. Again, I come back about speaking the same language. You need to understand the people that we build what you're designing, and you need to understand how it's actually be built to be able to draw a good detail. So this exchange with people on site is really significative, because it gives you the opportunity to actually question the way you built when you're drawing, and this need to be happening back and forth all the time. Like I'm working on those kind of building for more than 10 years now, and I still learn every time I go on site something new that I can bring back into the office, and that will appear in the way we draw details, because you need to adapt to the builders you've got and the possibilities, and the regulation of the country. Having worked in 3 different countries, sites experience is quite different, and it's also the responsibility of designer to adapt and find solution with the trades, because ends are clever, and there is a whole dimension on the ways things are put together that we can't just learn from drawing experience. So again, I come back about the detail. This is a detail of the 10-star house, where you've got reverse brick and insulation in a really basic stud system, and outside insulation. I will actually probably give a webinar soon about these control layers, and how you actually put some technology into to the detail to be able to control a lot of aspects in the construction of your wall. So again, we had the opportunity to create a sample for the Sustainability House Day, and you can see here that there is quite a great complexity in this wall, between reflective layer to create convection and use the mass, the reveal that are coming to set up properly with the windows, and the way we actually tape the membrane to the stud, and create airtightness around elements like windows, are really important and need to be drawn before site, and you need to speak with the builders about it, so they actually take the responsibility on the work that is done. And we've been lucky, we had an amazing team on this 10-star house, people really involved, and I think we all learn a lot about it. So this is about being technical. So I mentioned before the notion of control layers. There is a lot of aspect when you just bring just the windows and a wall description that are put into the detail before construction. So this is about waterproofing, this is about airtightness, this is for sure about insulation layer and how you consider the problematic of thermal breaching. But this is also about active mass, reflective layers, ventilated layers. So there is a lot of this aspect that you can consider in the project, and you can really be proactive around details. So it's for me it's fun. I don't know about everyone about that, but there is a project in every detail. That means that if you're really creative and you're missing designing, you can find a lot of fun designing details too. So same thing when we arrive to this simulation at the detailed scale. There is some tools available for simulation. So we're using here Woofy, that is a software that helps us to simulate the behavior of the wool in a long term. It can be to 25, 50 years, and how this construction of wool will behave in terms of moisture transfer, if there will be some retention of water, potentially mold growth. We can simulate all of that in the long term, having the right ventilation setup and the temperature inside and outside. It's really interesting to see also that you can simulate the behavior of the temperature in the wool. So if there is thermal bridging, you can be focused on solving those things. So again, we use a lot of software that are within Suho. So this is really interesting for us because we look at some solution, we speak with the builders about solution on site, and then we come back, we draw, we improve, we simulate, and then we come back with a final drawing that will be brought on site. And it's even in this long process, it's happened that some change occurs. But I think you have to be really flexible and really open-minded to actually bring the best of your building. So this is really important, and that's something that is really required nowadays in Australia, that you make sure that the people, the trades are actually trained, and so when you take new teams on board with such project, a workshop before entering on site, meetings before entering on site, making sure that everyone is aware about what is a thermal bridge, what is airtightness, and how in the way they will work, you make them responsible of the result for those aspects. So you have to specify the product really well. It's really important because if you swap from one product to the other with aspect like airtightness, it can be quite a big change. And the simulation with Woofy give us some idea about that. You need to be having a good description of the permeability you want for a membrane, for example. I will say like the density of the insulation and so on. So you also can refer to the manual of installation, and it's really good to have them on site and come back to them when you arrive to the point where things are set up. I will recommend that designers also have good knowledge about a manual of installation when they design, because there is a lot of those technical elements that we are using in really energy efficient building that require a different thought about the space we need, for example, for technical spaces. Yeah. So having meeting before this picture is a meeting we had with KESAP before entering on site for the 10 star, and this is also about managing the site. So you've got the site supervisors and the trades, and you speak with the toolbox about how you can make efficient and really environmentally friendly, like how to reduce the impact of your site, for example, by reusing, recycling on site. So this is about giving everyone the possibility to learn about it, but also setting up everyone responsibility and involvement. So you should make sure that everyone feel that they're actually responsible. So when you come back to them, you know who work on what and how we can achieve the best, putting all this energy together. And so at the end, I will just finish by telling you that one of the great tools we've got as a designer to make sure that we achieve now this target in terms of energy, it's controlling. It's actually having you have to set up during your site some point where you actually do, for example, if you work on the air tightness, the blowout out testing, and we actually do use 2 blowout out testing during the site to be able to actually test if a house is airtight before you actually do the finish, so you avoid big drama about coming back on everyone's work when intervention is necessary. You could also use thermal camera to make sure the insulation is actually set up properly before finishes. So at the end of the first fix and also smoke testing. So here we are. That's all the aspects I wanted to speak about today, and I hope you had a lot of fun and that it brings something for you. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them right now. I will answer them. Okay. Then I wish you a really beautiful day and hope to see you back on the chain to listen to my colleagues speaking about all their fabulous work and yeah, keep safe and warm.